A driver saying the car feels bad tells an engineer almost nothing, so here's what we actually need to know. Welcome back to the Racing Muze Academy, where I, Cassandra Moreno, tell you everything that I know about motorsports. I'm also really excited to share something with you. Get a good look. Can you see that? Can you see that? What does that say? It says SEMA 2026. Yes, I will be making a celebrity appearance at SEMA this year, so please come stop by and say hi. So far, we've talked about what motorsports actually is, what the industry looks like behind the scenes, and how to get into the industry, right? So today, we're going to be covering something that has completely changed the way that I've looked at racing. And it's going to answer one question that you've been waiting for. What do race engineers actually do? Because it's such a circus whenever racing comes into town, right? It's like, all right, most people just think that the teams show up, unload the cars, and fucking send it, which is true. Which is true to a degree, okay? That is, on paper, that is what we do. But I'm trying to give you some more details so that when you go and watch Formula One or something at your friend's house, you kind of know what the fuck's going on, okay? Oh, fuck! It's my damn light. The reality of motorsports is that racing is really just one giant engineering project that no one signed off on. There's rules, but with that giant engineering project, there comes so many factors like setup changes, tire pressures, fuel calculations, weather predictions, driver comments, driver bitching. So with all of that, today we're going to be talking about how to actually engineer a race weekend. We'll go from the moment we unload the trailer to the moment that checkered flag waves. The question you've been waiting for an answer for. What do race engineers actually do? A race engineer's job is to make the car as fast as possible while giving the driver as much confidence as possible, all while staying in the rule book. Let's go ahead and structure it like this. We have a car, right? And then we have a driver, right? Car gives us data. Driver gives us data. Very simple. Very simple. The track changes every session. The weather changes every session. The tires change every session. Basically, what I'm trying to say is change is inevitable. Our job is to take all of that data, and figure out how to make a car many more better. Which sounds pretty easy in retrospect, right? But one change can make one thing better and three things worse. So it's really good to have some patience and adaptability within this job. So the first day, we unload. The car is unloaded, everything's set. IMSA has a specific rulebook that you have to follow on when you get to the track. So you have to load in at a specific time, otherwise you're fined, and it's a whole thing. Before each race event, you're gonna get practice time as well. So first day you load in, second day is practice day. You're gonna get 2 stints, 2 runs. And on these practice days, you're not chasing lap records, you're not setting any kind of world, you're not trying to, like, you can be the best, but the goal here is just to get some practice in and see what the car's doing, develop some kind of plan, So with these 2 practice days, this is your data gathering day. You're going to be gathering as much changing data as you can. So practice is your test days. Every lap will tell you something within those practices. There are even rules against when teams are allowed to test and where. You are not allowed to test at one track within 2 weeks of the actual race event at that track. Anyways, that's how you get all your data. Oh my gosh, now what do we even do with this data, Cass? Let's break it down, because when I first started doing this, it was incredibly overwhelming, and I understood the basics of how cars work, and I understood a lot of different things like aerodynamics and thermodynamics, and I understood how things worked, but learning how to take information and translate it into real-life situations, that takes time. And it takes a level of endurance and patience to kind of see it through. You have to experience these things to kind of know what is even happening, right? And it's so easy to just say, oh yeah, this is how fluid mechanics works. This is how this, like, it's so easy to know the formulas, but to actually apply it into your real world. Why can't I say that? Applying it to real world situations. That was fucking hard. Applying it to those situations is a whole other skill. It's a muscle that you have to train in order to keep putting out and developing new ideas. So you can take one math formula and try to apply it, but you know, a formula is not gonna tell you everything in the real world example. So there's always so much information. Even in the world, there's just always so much information. What you have to do is you have to get quiet and filter out all that noise. So let's break it down, starting with something simple like tire pressures. We'll start with tire pressures, okay? Let's think of these as balloons. If we get into the nitty-gritties of all the fibers that different tires are made out of, that could be a whole other different video. So we're just gonna use balloons in this example. So say I blow up a balloon, okay? Say the balloon does not have a lot of air in it, okay? It's more of that loosey kind of, it flexes a lot, all right? Same thing with a tire. If the tire pressure is too low, it's going to flex a lot. And when tire pressures are lower, it can make the steering feel heavier. It can make the steering feel slower. It can wear out your tires faster. Now, on the contrary, if the pressure is too high, the tire becomes stiff. If we blow up that balloon with lots of air, it's going to expand and be really, really stiff, right? Instead of the entire balloon touching the ground, now we don't have enough grip. So only a small portion of that tire is making contact with the road now, which means less of that gorilla grip. So you're not going to be able to make as many points of contact when the pressure is too high. So the goal here is to try and find that sweet spot between pressures being too low to where they don't get up to temp, or pressures being too high where they're too hot and too high on temp. And yes, the pressure changes while you're driving. As the tire gets hotter, air expands, right? And the pressure increases. Why is all this relevant? I'm getting there. Hot tire pressures are a huge indicator of decisions and a massive importance on collecting data. Tire pressures are essential. But you'll often see a lot of mechanics jumping over the wall immediately and checking those tire pressures because that data is so important. You want to know how much more pressure you're gaining and how much pressure you're climbing when you are doing those hot laps, especially during practice. Because again, this is your time to collect the data is when you're in practice. With tire pressures, you also have to keep in mind what time your stint is at, what the weather is, what the track conditions look like, because those are all going to affect the temperature and pressure of your tire. You know, you kind of have to gauge where you're at. Again, you have to take what is applicable in those real life situations. Is it raining? Are you going to need rain tires? How many sets of tires do you think you're going to go through? How long is the stint? You know, if you got a 4-hour practice, you're probably going to need about 3 sets of tires, right? So you have to adapt and overcome in those situations. What if it rains? You need to go get a set of rain tires. How hot is the track right now? Is it 8 in the morning and it's a little bit cooler? No one's been on track yet? Or is it noon and have 3 sessions already happened and now the track's hot and it's 100 degrees outside? So you have to factor in all of those as well whenever you're trying to find that perfect set of tire pressure. So that's one category of information that you can use to engineer a race weekend. Another one is tire temperatures. So we'll just stick with tires because honestly, you could engineer an entire car with tires alone. It's crazy. They are so important. They're so crucial. It is the only part of the car that contacts the track. So with temperatures, we'll kind of think of it like walking barefoot. Sorry, they're censored. I sell these. Say we're walking on that pavement. Some spots of the foot are going to be cooler than others, right? Some points of contact on my foot are not going to be touching the ground. My heel would be on contact of the pavement, making my heel be hot, but the arch of my foot would not be making contact, making it cooler. We're going to take that same applicable knowledge and translate it to a tire. For example, if the inside of the tire is much hotter than the outside of the tire, that tells us something about how the tire is contacting the road. Right? And that information will help us decide what we need to adjust. Do we need to adjust some tire pressures? Do we need to adjust some camber or suspension settings? You know, depending on where that contact is making and whether the track has some kind of camber elevation to it, we have to take all those into consideration as well. But the main point is that if you have a happy tire, you have a happy engineer. That's tires. That's a huge amount of info alone right there. That you could do so much with just tires, okay? Another big point that you'll see in racing, oversteer and understeer. I swear to God, these two words, these two words come out of drivers' mouths more than anything. Is there's too much understeer, there's too much oversteer, there's not enough understeer, there's not enough oversteer. Like, what do you want? It's not bad. I just think that drivers kind of exaggerate these. Because I'll look at something and they'll be like, there's so much understeer. And I'm like, The data shows oversteer, but okay. But anyway, let's break these two down because they are the most common words used in motorsports. So let's imagine we're driving into a corner, okay? You turn the steering because you want to follow your line. Since we just talked about the tires, your tires will have a set grip budget, if you will, that allows the car to stick to the track and change direction. If one end of the car runs out of grip before the other, the car is going to behave in a way you didn't expect. Understeer happens when the front of the car loses grip first. You turn that steering wheel, but the car doesn't turn as much as you asked it to. Instead, it just keeps wanting to go straighter than you intended. Drivers will often describe this as, it won't turn, or the front is pushing, or I have so much understeer, or my personal favorite, damn it, this dog won't dig. Oversteer is the opposite. This time, the rear tires lose grip first. So when the front of the car turns into the corner, but now the back end wants to swing around and say hi. This one's scary. This is the kind of moment that makes drivers go, oh shit. Understeer is fuck, you know? Maybe we say it like that. Yeah, understeer is like fuck, you know, frustration. Oversteer is like, oh shit. Drivers will say that, you know, the rear feels loose, or they genuinely are just scared to drive it, or the back stepped out, you know, things like that. If there's too much oversteer, the car can rotate so much that it spins completely around. So which one is better? Neither one is automatically good or bad. Again, we're looking for that sweet spot. Just like tire temperatures and tire pressures, over and understeer, we're looking for that sweet spot. Too much of either makes the car difficult to drive. So overall, drivers and engineers are looking for a car that is just perfectly balanced. I know, right? Is that like it's hard? In a perfect world, the tires have a perfect amount of grip. The car weighs a perfect amount. There's a perfect amount of over and understeer. Everything's perfect. Everything's perfect in my world. But every driver is different. Some drivers genuinely prefer a little bit more oversteer. Some prefer lots of understeer. Some drivers just have their preferences. Finding that balance for your driver, though, is main priority. You want something that still feels safe enough to give them the confidence to go faster. And more confidence means more speed. And more speed means winning. Our practice session is over, and after every practice session, you're going to have a driver debrief. You're going to head back to the garage, and the driver's going to go over everything that they felt during the practices. Those aren't answers. Those are clues. Yes, it is our job to figure out why, but those are just clues. We still have one more thing to look at. Data. Oh, all the data. Everything gets logged. Everything from your practice gets logged. Not a single thing goes unnoticed. If you made a change to that car, it's logged. Whatever the accelerator position was, the RPM, the shifting, the GPS, the temps, your steering angle, your brake pressures, everything gets logged. It is my job to look at literally everything. After all of that is analyzed, we go ahead and make a strategy based on all the data that we have collected. Once we have looked at all that data and made our decisions, bam, you make a strategy and you go racing. And boom. You have successfully engineered a race weekend. Now, the only job left is to not crash and load the car back into the trailer. It is interesting though, because I have learned that in motorsports, it's not the fastest car that usually wins. It's the team that understands the car's behavior best. Those teams have the biggest advantage. And that's what makes this sport so incredible. I hope this gives you a better understanding of what race engineering a weekend actually looks like. This is what happens behind the scenes in the race weekend. So now when you're watching racing with your friends, you can be like, oh my God, I know what that person's doing. Do you see what it says? SEMA. So go ahead and subscribe because I will be uploading the full build projects to my YouTube for the SEMA builds. I will give you a hint though for these builds. 2 words. Superchargers and diamonds. Because duh, diamonds are a girl's best friend. So yes, subscribe if you want to see the project builds for SEMA 2026 this year. But also subscribe because next time we're going to talk more about aerodynamics and a bunch of mathy stuff. But I promise you it's not going to feel like math class. So stick around. Bye, divas.